Bigfoot, I don't care about you. Bigfoot, I hardly think about you. You usually are the last thing on my mind. Till some stupid late night TV show comes on and just makes me laugh.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad you guys are here. Can we get the chat open, please? Tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Aleksandar Petakov, and I'm happy to have Patty Troy and the tall ones in the chat. Welcome to Bigfoot Barbecue with Mrs. Barbecue and Jay Birch. We are the
Bigfoot Barbecue Dinner and Conversation.
Sorry about that. We have. I'm going to shut this other thing off. We have two things going. And that's not a good thing. And that's got me confused already. So here we go. It's nice to see you guys. Let's bring Aleksandar on.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome to dinner, Aleksandar. And these are our diners. So far, we have Patty Boy and the tall ones, Jay Fritz. So Patty Troy, my bad. So welcome, everyone. And what a pleasure it is to have you, Aleksandar. I'm absolutely excited about this one.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and good luck with the show and everything. I know you just got started, so that's exciting. I know the feeling of kind of getting just started, but you do a good job with the Bigfoot and the barbecue. I mean, those are two of my favorite subjects, so I think that's a match made in heaven right there. Throw some beer in too, and that's a good one.
Well, I'm glad you guys. I'm glad you like that. I'm really impressed with you and your crew. I watched your show the other day with all your guys, and I'll tell you what. We're looking for pass this torch on to other people, and I'm real happy to say that I have no problem passing it on to you. You and all your guys, man. You guys have done a hell of a job with what you do, and I'm proud to say that to you too. So
thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's about time that people take the subject more seriously. I think that's what a lot of us are, certainly a lot of folks out there in the community are sort of wanting more legitimacy. You see a lot of the stuff that's on TV or some of these online videos, especially on YouTube. And, obviously I'm one to talk because I make videos on YouTube, but we're trying to kind of elevate the conversation a little bit and maybe say, well, this subject isn't as crazy as the general population might think. It's not just all nut jobs out there doing it. And
right.
Everyone kind of has, I think everyone almost has their own roles or kind of areas they focus on with research. Some people are into outing hoaxes. They're into kind of exposing the phony baloney online, which is totally fine. We need more of that. And then some people, just are kind of what I'm doing is just trying to get out there, show some of these natural areas, and have a good time along the way as well.
You know what? I've watched everything you've done from the start. You're one of the guys like Justin Chirimpinski. I have followed that kid from the start. I love him.
He's awesome.
I love you. I love what you guys are doing. And your boots on the ground. You're out there. I can't carry those packs anymore. I can't walk anymore.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I can go to our same spot, and I do believe if you're looking to discover these creatures or to get more evidence, you have to go back to the same areas over and over and over. That's very important, and Justin does that. I know he gets frustrated, and we think about that too as we watch him. How frustrating it is for us sometimes. I just want to give him complete and total encouragement. And I feel like that for all you guys. You're following on the footsteps of other people. You're following on the footsteps of stories. And you're out there doing a hell of a job, Aleksandar. And I think that's important that people know that. You guys are doing entertaining things, but you're also serious about it. And you've made a big difference as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you do a really good job telling the story.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think part of it is definitely telling the stories. Got a little acrobat over here with this cat jumping around. If he pops up here, I'll I'll put them on the screen. But yeah, I think it's part of it is telling people stories. I've always, since I got involved in this subject, most of the abundance of, Bigfoot evidence, I guess, if you want to call it that, we have are eyewitness stories, right? Anecdotal evidence, firsthand or secondhand stories. People saw something, they heard something. So I think it's important to treat those stories with respect, and just, I like to share people's stories and just put them out there in their entirety, not really pass judgment on whether I think what they saw is legitimate or not. I mean, I think eyewitness data individually is sometimes, doesn't really constitute much in terms of moving the needle or evidence. Right. But I think when you get consistent reports of certain behaviors, or you have let's say, of 20 sightings in a particular area, maybe there's certain patterns. That's where I think that comes into play as well. And maybe if you have a fresh report, you can go out and see if there's any secondary evidence, whether it be tracks or anything like that. But yeah, I just feel it's important to share people's stories and kind of let them tell their stories. I know a lot of times, especially on TV and some other programs, I've heard from witnesses that have been on programs, that they only use a very small portion of it, and they kind of take it out of context, or they'll almost make it seem like they're saying something else.
Right.
This thing was a terror of the woods. It was trying to kill them. When I think if you look at the vast majority of eyewitnesses, they don't seem to think that these things are trying to kill them, So
people
I
have tried to lead me into saying something that you get led sometimes, and thank God for Leon. Thank you for being here tonight too, Leon.
How's it going, Leon?
Bigfoot Okanagan. Leon is the guy that really spent too much time, helping me, I think, sometimes, but he got me where I can do this and talk about what happened and everything. So I find that your Olympic, when you did the Olympic project, that was one of my favorite. I've watched almost every single thing you've done. So, but that one, you brought that through really nice. That was really well done.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that was kind of the first one we filmed back in April, where it was myself and my buddy Eli, who's become part of the show, and he actually edited that whole episode. He's a really good editor. I think he did a fantastic job. We kind of alternate on who edits the Beyond the Trail, because when we're filming them, it's my ideas, his ideas. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing, right? We're just trying to kind of put it all together, because when you're out in the woods, sometimes it's chaotic. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
A lot of the stuff that we have featured in the documentaries are just events that happen along the way. You'll find something interesting, or you'll have an encounter with another animal. So then you have all this footage on the cutting room floor, as we call it, that you have to select what's going to go in and what doesn't. So there's so much of that doesn't end up in there, little things that happen. Mm-hmm. That's kind of for behind the scenes stuff. But I think Eli did a great job with that. And that part of Washington is just, in general, Washington is beautiful. That was my first time ever in your neck of the woods there in Washington State. This was last April. So April of 2020. Or 2021, sorry. I don't know the years anymore.
I know.
They're kind of all over the place. Everything's blending. But we were there in April, and as soon as we landed, we drove straight from Seattle airport to Mount Rainier, and we drove up. It was snowing, and you could kind of see at the beginning of the film. It was just, I really wanted to just see that mountain, because I heard so many stories about
Mount Rainier not gorgeous?
Yeah, there's nothing like looking at that mountain and that drive up there to, I think, Nisqually Meadows. Nisqually, yep, that's the one. Yeah, and it's, of course, the road in the winter is closed from that point, so that's as far as we could go.
Yeah.
Yep. So we went up there, and then right after that, we basically drove out to the Olympic Peninsula and met up with the Olympic Project guys. And it was pouring rain, and we're heading down to the so-called nest site. And I just remember thinking, this is classic PNW weather, pouring rain, and we're going through this grueling path, getting whipped in the face with huckleberries and everything else, to try and get to this site where they'd cleared a little camping spot. And I'm like, you're miserable, soaked from head to toe completely.
Yes. Oh, we know.
Yeah. I'm sure being in that part of the country. And I'm just like, most people probably wouldn't do this, but we just love it so much. And, especially for Eli, he had been coming, he's from Southern California, so they don't get a lot of rain or clouds or anything. So it was a very different experience for him. And, having to learn how to light wood under wet conditions. We get some of that out here where I live in New Hampshire. We have very varied weather. It goes from rain to snow. We truly have kind of 4 seasons, but nothing like in the Pacific Northwest where it's that constant moisture with obviously temperate rainforests and everything. So what a beautiful, beautiful environment. I mean, I just feel like we got a little sliver of it. We went to that one area,
Yeah.
and I drove around the Olympic Peninsula as well. We went to the Hoh Rainforest. We were in Lake Crescent in that area. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, unreal. But then you see the rest of Washington, you see the Cascades as you're flying back, and you're flying over the Cascades, and you're just thinking, man, there's so much more here that I want to see.
Yeah.
And that from like where we're at here, right as you begin the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, you get very thick berries.
Yeah.
Several different species of berries. But then you go through through the Yakima National Forest. As you're heading up, you get to Bumping Lake, and there's lodgepole pine trees everywhere, but there's no berries.
Right. It's a
very
very different environment.
Different national forest as compared to this here with the Gifford Pinchot. This is really thick. That's real, like almost like a real piney. You get those pine cones that are like 16, 18 inches long. When you head up toward Bumping Lake into that national forest, it's the diversity in this, and then you go further east in Washington State, you hit desert.
Yeah, it's almost like a desert environment.
Yeah.
I mean, we experienced a little bit of that down in Oregon over the summer when we filmed 2 other of the films, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek and Bigfoot Mountain. So we went essentially from Northern California, that the start of the Pacific Northwest there in Bluff Creek, kind of where the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed back in '67, and then we drove up from there to Crater Lake, which is like another planet. It reminded me, it looks like the Mediterranean up there, and it was all smoky and hazy because of all the fires in the summer.
Yeah,
and then we were in the Umpqua National Forest. And,
it's Umpqua.
Umpqua. I always mess it up, so I appreciate that. But yeah, we were there, and there was this haze from the fires. And as we're driving up towards the Portland area, because we were going to be in the Mount Hood area for the rest of that trip, you see that almost arid environment. It was very different, a lot more pine trees. And then when you get towards Mount Hood, a little bit more moisture, so there's more thick forests. You have that the hanging moss that reminded me almost of Spanish moss that you see down south. Yes. Really kind of cool environment. So many different biomes within just a few hours drive. You don't really get that in a lot of other places. So I think that's very unique to that area for sure.
Joe, take care. Joe got his booster shot today, and he's feeling not feeling so well. He's tired. So thanks for coming in tonight. Western
Take it easy, Joe.
Investigation. That's Joe.
Yeah, Joe's a good guy.
Joe, thank you, Joe, for coming in tonight, buddy. You know I love you, so I hope everything's good for you. And good night to you, my friend. So what got you interested in any of this, Alex?
There's this guy.
What was it?
He wants to say hi. This is Braxy. He's about 3 months old. We actually just adopted him we were on a trip down to Kentucky and West Virginia and Ohio, and we adopted him at the Flatwoods Monster Museum. Yeah, so they call that county, it's Braxton County, West Virginia, and the monster is called Braxy. So we kind of named him after that. So,
and our German Shepherd's coming under the table here and acting off. Her name's Sibylla. She's named after Sibylla Kristen Irwin. She's a friend of mine. She's a good artist and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she's a good friend and everything. So I asked her if I could name her 5 years ago, and these German Shepherds never grow up. I'm about sick of it.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's like having a 2-year-old around all the time.
Oh, yeah.
What got you into this, Alex?
So when I was a kid, I was always just really interested in paleontology and dinosaurs. I mean, what kid isn't? Mm-hmm. But I was really interested in that sort of stuff and all kinds of animals. Just really loved animals. And I remember when I was a kid, I was on a ski trip in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, and my dad told me the story of the Yeti. And because he was giving me this toy, it was like a shadow box figure. They're really, really high quality. They were like these painted sort of solid toys, and it had this scroll that had the whole story of the Yeti, and it was an old ancient scroll looking thing. He told me the story, and it was just really intriguing. So I already had the interest in animals and everything. So I started watching documentaries on Bigfoot. And when I was old enough to read books, I was starting to read all the Lauren Coleman's, Thomas Steenberg. I saw he was in the chat. It's really cool to kind of interact with him now. Somebody that, I've read when I was younger and read about. So it's really interesting. And then
To me, if I could just interject for a sec, to
No,
me,
go ahead.
Thomas does a show called On the Shoulders of Giants. And as far as I'm concerned, we now stand on the shoulders of Thomas, and he is the giant.
Oh,
Those
absolutely.
of us who are in this Bigfoot thing, we stand on his shoulders. He's about the most credible person I've ever known in my life. So
Oh yeah,
I'm always
absolutely.
grateful, and to have him sitting here in my chat in our chat is a wonderful thing. So I God bless you, Thomas. Thank you for
Oh
coming.
yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah, I have two of his books at home. I was mentioning them the other night on my show when we were talking about Bigfoot books, and you know, I interviewed him on my show, I believe last year, and it's just, again, it's crazy. You grow up reading someone's work and reading about their kind of adventures and everything, and then you get to talk to them and have them on, and it's really cool. That's what I love about this community, is being able to meet people that, you know, they're not larger than life, right? They're not some giant A-list celebrity that's probably going to blow you off or whatever. They're very accessible people, and I think that's important to, especially the younger generations. You know, the openness. You know, like there's, you know, the people that hoard data or whatever that don't want to share their secrets, but I've been lucky enough to know quite a few people who, you know, are not only willing to share stuff, but gladly passing it on. Like I have a friend of mine, I believe Thomas probably met him at one point, John Horrigan. He doesn't really do this stuff anymore, but he adventured back in the day and met John Green and DeHinden and all these guys. And he got out of Bigfoot, and he was into Bigfoot in Roswell. He got out of that when the internet came along. But a few years ago, he gave me his entire collection of tracks that he had been given, as well as all these books. So it was really cool. And I love that. I hope that one day I can pass that stuff down to some kid.
All right, Brett.
Started.
It's
I felt the same way. I tried to keep myself composed. The pressure's on.
All right, man. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Brett, for that one.
That's good.
So who were some of the first people you met to try to find credibility in this?
So, I mean, I met Lauren Coleman at one point, just because I live on the East Coast, and his cryptozoology museum is in Portland, Maine, which is only about, it's like 2 hours from where I grew up. So, you know, I visited there when I was in middle school and high school, and just, you know, amazing place to see casts. And I think that was the first time I ever saw, you know, like Patterson Gimlin casts and different historical kind of casts. But it wasn't until I was out of school around 2015 that I started looking into stories. And I was traveling in California, and I went to Willow Creek, and that's when I, you know, was going around interviewing people, and didn't make it up to the film site then, but you know, that's something we did this past summer. But I started talking to people, and then when I got back home after that trip, I was sort of like, hey man, there's Bigfoot stories all over. Let me see if I can find any local people. And then that's when I started discovering the culture in New England, especially in my state of New Hampshire. There are stories. I mean, there's plenty of eyewitness encounters, but people are not as willing to talk about it as they might be in, say, Washington or Oregon, where it's a little more culturally acceptable. I mean, that's something I was told as well by a lot of friends who live out there. They say, oh, you know, if I go to the bar and talk about Bigfoot, maybe somebody will laugh, but 20 minutes later, a few of the guys will come over and, you know, well, you know, I saw one.
Look, I told what happened to me and her at work to one of the older guys who was a good friend of mine. Dennis was a very good friend of mine. He's retired and all that. And then, so after all the laughing and all that from other people, I'm out there doing my job, and I start getting people coming up. Hey, you know what? Were you serious about that? Because you know, I'm just like, son of a bitch.
Right. Well, yeah. See, it's kind of like here that happens to some extent, but it's a lot more. People, you know, this is the first place that was settled, you know, in the colonial period. So people still have that very, I don't want to say puritanical attitude, but they're more socially conservative. They don't just talk about these sorts of things very, very openly. I appreciate that, Thomas. That really means a lot. And you cannot forget that quote. I think we should all remember that.
We should live by it.
Yeah.
We should in this field, we should live by that. And
for sure.
I absolutely cherish the fact that I can have this man. In fact, I'm going to have him as a guest. My God, I'm going to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's always those influential Canadians in this field. That's
I'll tell you what,
since day one.
we've got a lot of good things, good people coming out of Canada as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Lots of them. And
Yeah.
it's not just Leon, but it is Thomas, and it was Renee, who I knew personally.
Renee, yep.
Not like we were not best friends or anything, but we were friends, and
Sure.
and I knew things about him. He knew things about us. He loved children and all that type of stuff. I absolutely always held him in high regard. I think that if there was never had a thing as a Sasquatch, he would have stayed with his wife and his family. I don't know for sure, but I know that he left. That was that important to him.
Yeah, right.
But I know
Well,
that
he gave his life for it, yeah.
every time we were around Renee Hendon, he loved all the children that all of us brought, and he loved women. Jesus, flirty guy. Jeez, worse than Bob Gimlin. Seriously.
Bob Gimlin, yeah, he gets all the ladies.
Yeah.
No, you're right. There's a lot of really great Canadians. I mean, one of my favorite of that bunch, John Bindernagel. I mean, I never had the chance to meet him, but
I wish I could have.
I know Justin Chernopesky met him a few years before he passed and interviewed him, and I talked to him about it, and he said it was such a great experience. The guy barely knew him and was already had him in his house 2 minutes and was showing him all the cast, and his book is one of my favorites. And John Green, of course, can't go without saying John Green as well. Just that you had those people like that were just not afraid to really jump into the subject. And it's an interesting comment from Something to Sasquatch talking about I got a lesson on how to say Marketich from Thomas. So I believe he's referring to Vladimir Marketich, who is Croatian, I believe, and that's similar to my part Croatian, part Serbian. So it's I always remember hearing his name until I kind of looked up that he was also an academic that was intrigued by the Bigfoot topic. And you'll see he's not as well known, I'd say, as some of the others, but his name pops up from time to time. You see it in maybe in like the bibliographies of some of the other works. So yeah, really interesting.
That's true, Thomas. That is very true. All I know is, you know what, he loved kids, and he would play with the kids, and and he would flirt, and he would tell the dirtiest freaking jokes, dude. God, he had a plethora of filthy jokes that I have some of them in my mind, but I'm not going to tell them.
Sure, yeah, you might get kicked off YouTube. Right on.
Who was the first person you met that you admired in this field?
So, I mean, I guess I would say Lauren Coleman, because I just grew up reading so many of his books, and I still consider him a friend. I still talk to him from time to time, and I visit the museum up there in Maine. Just again, it's the closest kind of place to me. But there was a few witnesses that I met when I first started getting into sort of filming people and asking them and interviewing people. And there was a couple eyewitnesses that I got to talk to that really kind of, it made me wonder, I wasn't sold on the idea, of course, as a kid,
right.
I believe in Bigfoot, but I wasn't sold on the idea. But you hear some of these stories, and then I would talk to other people that knew one of these people as well. And they said that, yeah, his story was consistent. It hasn't changed. I've heard it for years, and it was the same sort of thing. And it was a pretty, extraordinary kind of chance encounter. And that sort of got me thinking, well, I mean, I don't understand the purpose of making up a story like that. It seems like you almost have something to lose when you create a story like that. Yeah. And over the years, that's gotten to talking to people who literally want nothing to do with the story at all. They'll maybe tell me once they trust me, but they don't want their name out there. They don't want to be on TV, certainly, or to be interviewed or anything like that. They'll tell you the story once they feel safe enough, and then they don't talk about it anymore. That's it. And it's like, well, if you were going to make something up, you probably could make something better than experiencing some kind of rock throwing 8-foot ape creature in the woods.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there would be some other thing you could probably entertain your friends with, and especially not tell anybody. That's what kind of intrigued me. So yeah, I'd say the eyewitnesses definitely were very influential during that 2015, 2016 period when I was first starting interviewing people. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. I originally wanted to do a feature film. I was somebody that I studied communications, and I really enjoyed doing films, documentary films especially. I wanted to do a feature on Bigfoot, especially when I traveled to Bluff Creek and Willow Creek in that area. But then I kind of got to the point where I'm like, well, there's so many stories. I don't know if it's worth lumping in a New Hampshire or Vermont eyewitness with a story from Northern California, maybe almost having them do their own thing. So then I started my YouTube channel and just would put up videos on short documentaries or just basically interviews, just full interviews with interviewing eyewitnesses, and very minimal kind of B-roll and some music, and that was it, and just putting that up there. And eventually that turned into doing the live stream show, which I started right when COVID kind of began. And then I started working with Small Town Monsters along the way. I met Seth because he liked this documentary I did on the Loch Ness Monster. It was like a 15-minute cheesy kind of my first stab at cryptozoology, and I put it on YouTube, and I get emails from people saying, well, hey, this guy Seth wants to show this at a monster event he's having in Ohio. And I'm like, why would you want to show this thing? It sucks. And then from there, we ended up becoming friends, and we're very like-minded in the sense that we were both intrigued by the subject since we were younger. So what I encounter a lot with people in the subject is there's the people like myself who get into it because they had a curiosity, and then there's the folks that get into it because they've had an encounter. So I fit into that curiosity category, certainly. And Seth was very similar along those lines.
Yes, yeah.
Was very curious about it, just wasn't a believer at all. I was very skeptical actually at the time. We just kind of hit it off, and we started doing short documentaries and that sort of stuff. And one thing's led to another. We're doing these Beyond the Trail now, which I'm doing primarily, and then putting them out through Small Town Monsters on the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
I love them.
It's been really fun because it's just I love nature and backpacking, and I'm a hiker and a backpacker and outdoorsman. Aside from the whole Bigfoot thing, I love practicing bushcraft, and I've hiked and backpacked a lot of the mountains out here in New England. We have, believe it or not, people think there's no mountains on the East Coast, but we actually have some pretty rugged peaks up here, especially in New Hampshire. We have some of the most rugged peaks east of the Rockies out here, where people die a lot because they underestimate it.
Right.
Mount Washington may only be 6,000 feet tall, but it's claimed over 160 people in the past 100 years. And the weather conditions change. I've seen it go from 70 degrees in the summer to getting pelted with pieces of hail this big and having to duck in a bush where there's no trees, and there's an alpine zone at 4,000 feet. So we have some pretty rugged woods out here. And so I've just always loved getting out there into the woods and enjoyed it, and did some survival naturalism training back in the day when I was kind of late in high school. And I really got an appreciation for it. I didn't really grow up camping or backpacking or anything like that. My parents, they grew up under communism, and they were from Yugoslavia, and there was somewhat of an outdoor culture, but nothing like in this country where it's just completely, there's that rugged individualist attitude where people, I know I have a lot of friends who, especially in a place like New Hampshire, which is very outdoors orientated, we have a lot of hiking and fishing and hunting and all that kind of stuff. So I know a lot of people that grew up with that. I didn't grow up with it as much, aside from summer camps and that sort of stuff. So I really got into it on my own and just sort of fell in love with it. And I don't think there's any other way I'd like to spend my time, my free time at least, than getting out in the woods and the mountains and the swamps and appreciating this beautiful, beautiful place that we're in. Wherever I end up going, there's something that's fascinating.
What irritates you the most, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah.
What irritates you the most in this field? I have some ideas, but I'll share them with you when I'm on your show.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
What is irritating to you when you're trying to accomplish things?
Well, there's a lot, but I mean, I think one of the things I don't really think this is so much as it irritates me. I know a lot of folks get kind of put on edge, and I think that's just part of the education, right? I think when you see time and time again, and maybe that's the curse of social media and just being online. On the one hand, it allows us to be connected with others, especially that are like-minded. We can know people in all these other places that you wouldn't have been connected to otherwise through common thread of Sasquatch or whatever hobby, insert hobby here. But those people, you see in the Facebook groups, the same hoaxes that have been outed 5-6 years ago, they just keep resurfacing,
keep coming back.
And I get it. Like people, they're new to the subject, they get excited and they see something and they just kind of, they can't wait to share.
Well, now you've got this fresh new author that everyone's just going crazy over, and now I guess what is it? Into the Fray is going to actually start publishing more of his books, and this guy does nothing but pollute every single site there is with old stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the clickbait nature of online. I mean, people, and I think that's like a larger societal thing. It's not necessarily just related to Sasquatch. I see it in other kind of sub communities and hobbies I'm into, where it's like people that post controversial things, whether they're right or wrong, they get the clicks and they get the anger and they get that frustration, or that the clickbait stuff, the angry clickbait, where people will just go and view it just because they're God, this stuff is crap. that person is unscrupulous. They're just saying, hey, I'm collecting the views and the win and like the wins here, so I could care less. And I think that's a byproduct of this sort of toxic culture that we're in with social media, and that gets into the media and all that kind of stuff, and our attention spans are just crazy. Inmates running the asylum. Could be. I think another thing that sort of irritates me is the woo stuff, because I think people are so quick to jump to that conclusion. Now, I will say this, I'm not necessarily a proponent of paranormal Bigfoot or anything like that. I think there are stranger things out there that I can't explain. I've seen a UFO. I don't know if it was aliens. It was just a UFO by the term unidentified flying object.
Right.
That sort of stuff. So I know that there's weird things out there and the world is a crazy, crazy place. There are things that weather phenomena and all kinds of natural phenomena that we don't even know exist yet. Maybe in 10 years, we'll have an idea of what this kind of stuff is, but now it's just kind of beyond. That's why it's considered paranormal, right? So maybe we'll get to a point where we actually understand what it is. We just don't at the moment. But I think people just really jump to that paranormal Bigfoot thing right away. Maybe it's because they're coming from a mindset where they're already into ghosts and that sort of stuff.
Probably.
Interdimensional. So that's sort of probably the filter they're viewing it from. I think people jump to that. And as I said, I'm not really a proponent of the woo stuff, but I've talked to a few people that I think are pretty credible, at least in my view, that have described some weird things with Sasquatch. And, I don't write it off. I don't say just because it doesn't agree with me, oh, you're completely wrong. I just say, oh, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing. And, again, I don't subscribe to it, but I'm not going to necessarily downplay it just because I don't believe in it. But I think that's maybe a little rude. I don't want to come off as just telling you basically your encounter is fake in front of your face. But like if there's a way to explain it, maybe we might understand what it was that they saw, why there was a glowing orb or something. I mean, that was something even in the Olympic Bigfoot that Shane Corson, the Olympic Project, was talking about with. They saw this glowing orb in the woods, and they were, you're moving around in the woods. It's all strange. And they said they went up to it and they saw that it was this Firefox kind of fungus that was glowing. And it's amazing. That's something so cool that you can find out in nature. And how else would you explain that if you weren't aware of that sort of thing? So I think maybe that's where a lot of these stories of misunderstandings come from. You see all these old maps of horrific sea monsters and creatures in the ocean that are many of which are now, we know what those animals were, but in the 1500s they thought the narwhal, I mean, it's a whale with a tusk sticking out.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How do you explain that normally? So that thing became a crazy monster, and a lot of these creatures were like that. So yeah, he's in total play mode. He's like, okay, you've been talking enough, Dad, let's go. But I think it's I don't know. I think that definitely jumping to the paranormal Bigfoot kind of conclusion right away without even first establishing if it was possibly Bigfoot or not, because I think as a lot of folks appropriately say, that's the last thing you should assume is what you're experiencing in the woods, especially if you're just hearing it or you're not. I mean, if you have a Sasquatch standing right in front of you, then that's a different story. You can probably argue it a little better that, maybe it was a Sasquatch than if you're just getting stuff thrown at you or wood knocks and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think there's plenty of stuff that annoys me, but I think those are probably some of the bigger ones.
And the thing is, we're kind of considered closed-minded if we don't buy into that. And that's what bothers me is they always say, well, I'm open-minded, you're not. And I'm just thinking, I don't know about what makes me closed-minded here. You're telling me that Sasquatch is walking through portals and flying spaceships and whispering in your ear, and I'm telling you, I think that might be something else. It doesn't mean it's not.
No, yeah,
this kind of thing, but it's not Sasquatch as far as I'm concerned. What I saw was a real physical being.
Yeah, well, you could turn around at the same token and say, well, you're closed-minded because you're assuming this thing isn't flesh and blood. I mean, if you want to play that game, like it's one of those things. I think it just comes down to, again, I think it's mostly what people probably the worldview they already have. So if you're
Right.
a ghost hunter, and I've met plenty of people that are into ghosts and do that sort of stuff. It's not my thing. I always joke around and say I'm way more comfortable in the woods at night than some haunted asylum or something.
Same here.
And I'd probably, project something out there because I'm scared and thinking about ghosts, and every noise that you hear becomes that. Yeah, that happens in Bigfooting, sure. But I think I've talked to a lot of those folks, and they do seem to lean more paranormal right away because, that's just the way that they view the situation. So
And you have some people like Linda Moulton Howe throwing her name in that type of stuff, and so you get some big name, credible people. She's won some awards and everything, for journalism and stuff. And when you get people like that throwing their hat in there about when cattle get mutilated and all that stuff, even though it was proven that they were doing that, with the sheriff came and said that they had been doing that for some reason. And I remember watching that documentary going, why was in New Mexico, why were they doing that? The sheriff told her, and she's like, she refused to believe it.
Right.
But that's just strange stuff.
Yeah.
That we have to deal with. I always say this: if you can convince me, then I'm all for it. But you need to convince me. Don't yell at me. Don't call me names. Don't start cursing at me.
Yeah, and I think that's part of people nowadays just have trouble talking to people they disagree with in general. Or people just get angry very easily nowadays. I mean, you see it a lot. It's just a general societal problem, perhaps. But especially when it comes to that, it's always, they're against us. They're, unless somebody really is being malicious and giving you a reason to think that, yeah, this person probably doesn't like me. It's probably against me. And there's plenty of that too. But just because somebody's asking tough questions, that doesn't mean that they're automatically against you. They're trying in their minds to understand probably what you are describing to them, because especially if they've never even heard of something like Sasquatch before, the idea is it is kind of ridiculous. The idea that there's some 8-foot tall hairy creatures living out in the woods. I think the more you get into this topic, and the more time you spend out there and you see how much territory there's the possibility that, yes, there might be enough space for something like this in certain numbers to exist. But I know a lot of people who just don't spend time out in the woods, and they would say, it would have been proven so long ago, there's not enough space out there. And when you say stuff like there's more woods now in North America than there was when, the colonists were here, or after the logging that came, especially out where I'm at. New Hampshire is now the second most forested state in the country by number of trees. The first is Maine, our neighbor. And 150, 200 years ago, these areas were just completely clear cut for the most part. Maybe 20, 30% of that old growth left. There's really not much of it that was around. But all those environments now are amazing habitats for moose, for bear, for deer, bobcats, all the woodland critters, especially the eastern woodland critters that you can name, we get in these areas. And it's amazing because, you'll be hiking in the woods around here, and you'll come across a stone wall. You'll think you're in the middle of nowhere. You come across a stone wall, and those are old property boundaries where somebody had sheep, and when they burn the fields, that would stop the next field from burning. So those are property boundaries, and now they're in the middle of these thick woods that looks like nobody ever goes into. And it's just, that's just how the time changed, and people started living less and less on the landscape and more in suburban and urban areas. So there's not as many people out there in the woods. So a lot of these animals came back. So you have food sources and all sorts of things for the known predators. So I think it's really interesting once you kind of look at it from that perspective. And
you found those. That's one of my favorite things. I watched that today. Actually, I've watched it before, but I watched it today, where you find those walls.
Yeah,
they're not like right close to town or anything.
No, they're in the middle
out
of
there
nowhere.
in the forest, and you find these walls, dude. Total respect to you, man, for being. I can't walk like that. You guys got them packs on doing that. You're out there, eating crazy meals and shit.
Yeah, the stuff that's best for you, those backpacking meals and the instant ramen things. When you're on the move all the time, it's tough to get all the healthy stuff that you can. But Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, that particular one, it's funny, people are criticizing, oh, you guys have such huge packs, amateurs going out there with all this gear. I don't think they heard the part that it was 12 degrees. That was the coldest day. That was the coldest day of 2021. That just happened to be the weekend that we were going out and doing this filming, because I had my camera rented for that weekend, so I couldn't like move it around, because that's before I had a camera that I'm using now that's actually mine. So we rented this professional camera and we had to do it then. And I'm like, you know what? This is part of the experience. I'm up for a challenge. I like challenging myself, and going to sleep in 12 degrees that says it feels like 7 to 8 degrees with the wind chill. Let's go. This is what this gear is for, right? You have all this cool stuff that you get. And if you just keep it clean and keep it sitting in the pile, you got to get some scars on there and put the gear to the test and see what works and see what doesn't work, and just have fun with it. It's a challenge and it really gets you. And I was talking to my friend there, Josh, who was with me for that. And afterwards we went out and, we're like, oh, I can't wait to get home and take a shower and have a warm meal. And it gives you an appreciation for what you do have, and for the stuff we take for granted every day, a warm bed, comfortable situation, to live in and whatever. So it's those things that really make me appreciate what I have.
You guys did a heck of a job on that. I like the big cat one too. You guys did.
Oh, thank you.
Very, very well done. I mean, I can't think of anything I have not enjoyed that you've done, Alex. It's been a great joyride. I love the narration when you guys are out there. I love Eli. I love that kid. Boy, he's another one. It seems like you guys are Batman and Robin. I'm sure.
He's so funny. We met while working on this other documentary series, and we were kind of going around the country and that sort of stuff, and just became good friends. And then when I was doing this, he was the perfect person to have as the right hand man kind of situation. And I don't want it to be like the Batman Robin thing. We're both equal. He has his strengths, I have mine.
Right.
We both just try to do a good job and put a good story together. But he wasn't as into the outdoor stuff as I was. So it was really cool from when we first started. He could barely light a fire on his own to now. Now we get to camp after hiking all day or whatever. Like we did this backpacking trip in Utah over the summer for an upcoming episode. That was just probably one of my favorite hiking trips ever. 6 miles into this amazing alpine lake in the high Uintas in the Rockies, 10,000 foot elevation. So it was completely kicking our butts. But now, like I take my pack off, he's already getting the fire ready. It's like he knows what to do now, and it's amazing. And I'm not trying to claim to be his mentor or anything, but you just pick these sort of things up along the way, and it's really cool to have somebody then that you can truly trust with your life. And I would absolutely trust him if we got into a bad situation, where GPS or satellite GPS or something like that. That's all you really have, and then another person. You got to really trust that person, and that's something I learned while doing a lot of hiking out here as well with another buddy of mine. You really get to know somebody that way, and it's all part of the journey ultimately. I think it's just Bigfoot aside, you have something that happens out there. It's you got to deal with it in that moment. You can't let it, you can't call 911 or something, especially when you're out there with no service or anything.
I told you I want to sing a song with Eli on Mount St. Helens. If you guys come up here this year,
for sure,
I want to sing an old Hank Williams song with Eli.
We're both huge country fans, so I'm sure he'd absolutely love that. I can't sing or play any instruments, so that's all in his ball. But he was playing with Mark Marcel when we were there in Portland over the summer. He'd play in Bluff Creek, wherever we went. We'd kind of strum the guitar a little bit, and it's just one of those fun camping things, just have a fun time, bring some tunes out and have a good time.
I think that's important if you're when Brent Dill was up with us, and Steve Anderson and his wife were up with us at our spot. And we played music up there with the Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I think it's important to act natural, be natural. Don't act it, be natural.
Yep.
While you're in your spot and these things are around, that's what they came to us. We didn't go to them. They came to us when they encountered us. So I think that's really important. A lot of people, I listen to researchers go, yeah, there's no fire, there's no light, there's no this or that, and we're going to be quiet. And I'm just like, well, I don't know who you think you're fooling. They're the ones that rule out there.
Yeah.
I just think you have to be it's like a playground. Paul Graves will tell you it's like a playground.
Paul Graves, I love his music as well.
You know what? He has one song that I dearly love, and I think it's called Jim
Henry.
Jim Henry, yes.
Jim
I listen to that
Henry.
over and over. And over.
Yeah. I like that one. Yeah, we were actually when we were in the Olympics, Todd Hale of the Olympic Project, he kept playing that song on his phone. You know, Jim Henry's got a friend or something like that. It's a good one. But no, Paul's cool. He let me use my his song about Louse Camp when we did the stuff for Bluff Creek, because Louse Camp, you know, not a lot of people outside from the Bigfoot world know about it. This beautiful little camp down there nestled in between where Bluff Creek meets up with Notice Creek, and you have that incredible blue clear water there that when it's 100 degrees in the day, as it gets in the mountains up there, you jump into that creek, it's in the 50s, absolutely beautiful. And then of course at night it gets to the 50s in the mountains, so the weather is in the extremes. But that song really went well with, you know, showing what that area of Louse Camp was like. So music is an important.
He's another researcher I hold in high regard, Paul. I absolutely hold him in high regard. It's just a handful for me.
Right.
I'm an old timer, and you know, started out years ago and all that stuff, and knew some of the originals.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, hey, got Bill Reed in the chat. Hey,
Thomas Steenberg.
I'm glad to have you. Bill Reed is a skeptic, but he's a good friend of mine.
I think I've seen him commenting on some of my streams as well. Yeah.
He is. He doesn't cause trouble. His stuff is legitimate. He has the real legitimate questions, and that's what I appreciate about Bill Reed. Right. And he's a good friend. He's a reliable friend. So I appreciate you being here tonight, Bill.
Right on. I see a comment from Thomas saying Sasquatch by Stomping Tom Connor. That's a good song. I love that song. We used it as a squatch bait while we were up in Maine for the Beyond the Trail. We blasted it out of my car as loud as I could when we were doing this experiment where I went out onto the middle of this. We were up in northern Maine, which is actually the least populated area anywhere, basically east of the Rockies. And it's this massive swath of a couple million acres of wilderness that adjoins, you know, parts of Canada and everything too. There's nothing out there but moose and wildlife, and it's not owned by state or federal authorities. It's privately owned. It's all logging companies that own those areas. So we had driven like 3 hours in on logging roads and on these dirt roads, and there was this beautiful little pond there. You know, we have these kind of fish that are in there. But I went out there at night with my little kayak, had my FLIR unit and a little speaker, and to mask my going out there, we played the Stomping Tom Connor Sasquatch song as loud as we could from camp. And I went out there, and then we let it go silent, and then I started playing, you know, baby crying noises from the boat and scanning with the FLIR. You know, sometimes when you're out there, you got to try. We try some experiments, you know, other stuff that some people have claimed they've had success with or they've tried before. If not, it's fun. I mean, where else do you get to try? You know, sitting out in the middle of a lake at night at like 11 in the morning, or at 11 at night, and just playing baby sounds and seeing what happens. You can hear it echoing through the mountains, and it's a very creepy kind of feeling, but it's pretty cool as well.
Are you out of your mind? You playing baby sounds out there? Golly. You know, people talk about hearing babies. Yeah. Have you heard anything like that while you've been?
Not personally, but there is. I can't say too much about it, but because we're going to be hopefully going up there at some point. But there's a spot in Alaska, a guy that I know, and some of the recordings he have are pretty weird. And one of them has sort of a baby-like sound, but we're hoping to get up there. And I have heard the stories of, especially in Appalachia, down that area in the coal mines, people hearing stories of babies crying out of the mine. And I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, there's a lot of really weird stuff down there in general, like with cults and very weird human-related issues. But I have heard that sometimes. But I don't know why a Sasquatch would do a baby cry. I mean, unless some weird enticing thing or
creepy shit,
creepy mimicry. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But you know, it'd be interesting if chimps or gorillas could do mimicking or anything like that. I don't know if there's enough data really to talk about if they do any mimicry or anything. I don't know. They're really interesting because I'm sure as humans, you know, we can mimic anything. You see, what I love watching a lot is the people who do. I like accents a lot, and I kind of do some amateur stuff with myself where I do like sort of funny accents, different cultures, and you can go online on YouTube and check out these guys who do all these different accents to a T. You know, this one guy will do 15 different accents. like a South African accent, all the different British ones, an Indian immigrant accent in America, like just so many good ones. So humans, we have like very interesting vocal capabilities and what we can do. So, I wonder if other primates are able to do that. And, obviously a lot of the Sasquatch stories involve supposed mimicry. I think some of it probably is just the animals that are doing them that, people are saying, oh, that's a Sasquatch, especially when it comes to barred owls. Those can definitely make a lot of very weird noises if you're not used to them, the whooping and that kind of stuff. But it's a little different when someone has it right next to their tent and they can feel it vibrating in their chest. And that's something, I don't think that's necessarily a barred owl. I don't know what it could be, but it's pretty interesting.
So what do you think you've come close to a Sasquatch in any way, shape, or form, or do you think you've been near something that you can't explain, or what do you got to talk about here?
Probably the second part, near something I can't explain. I can't obviously say 100% it was a Sasquatch. I never saw one, but back to your point about kind of acting natural. Most of the times we ever had anything really weird happen or something we can't explain has been when we were doing normal things. We were around the campfire, we're in our tent in the morning. When we're out in Utah, we're just hiking, and then all of a sudden something, starts wood knocking around us and basically cuts our hike off right there, and we're just kind of standing there. What the heck? It's a good point, Pat. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if chimps or gorillas could be taught to do noises. I don't know. I don't really know a lot about it. But
have you heard anything out there as far as
coyotes? Yeah, that's a good point.
Have you heard
those old recordings?
Did you ever hear, like, say, a coyote, or we're going to say a raven? I think ravens are connected to them in a big way, and I'll talk about that when I'm a guest on your show.
Sure.
But have you heard things where you just went, that's not the way that's supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard coyotes sounds that are very weird, but I think are probably still coyotes. Like we had this one in Colorado where it was just absolutely god-awful coyote screaming. And from what I understand now, usually it's the alpha that will be away from the other group of coyotes that will let out the blood-curdling, weird-sounding scream. But the one thing that we heard that was really strange, and I can't, again, say this 100%, but it was while we were at Bluff Creek, we heard what I can only describe as a whoop. And I managed to catch it on film, and it was in the Bigfoot at Bluff Creek. And I had my buddy Chris kind of analyze the audio, and it's tough when you're analyzing audio, but he believes that the Hertz level was pretty low, which would indicate something larger. And I talked to every single person in camp. Everyone was mostly around the fire talking and doing this stuff. And I was one of the only people that heard this whoop noise right at the edge of camp after we had a very weird incident with my friend's dog, his dog Bandit, which has hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, very hardcore backpacker dog. I mean, has been out there with other animals, bears and that kind of stuff. Ron, my friend Ron Reed, he's definitely a badass dude, big hiker as well. But this dog, like, I've never seen a dog cower like that. Its tail was solidly between its legs, and he never has to be leashed. Super nice temperament. Ron doesn't even own a leash, didn't have it at that time, but we had to take another guy's belt and make a temporary leash because he just kept trying to duck into the bushes. And this happened a few feet from where the original Bigfoot tracks were found, the ones in 1958 with Jerry Crew and those logging guys. We were actually being shown the site by some of the Bluff Creek Project members, Jamie Wayne and some of those guys.
Right, yeah.
And this happened, and a couple other guys heard something moving in the woods, and they heard like slight tapping or knocking noises. I don't know what exactly they heard. I didn't hear it. I was too busy listening to the story of the Jerry Crew stuff. But the dog freaked out. He kept trying to duck in the side of the trail. And we brought him back to camp. He had calmed down. He was shaking. I mean, he was very, like I said, I don't have a dog, so I don't know dog behavior. But Ron said this was completely out of the ordinary for him to act like that. I mean, he's an older dog now, but it was then that I was going up to Bandit, and I happened to be filming, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" Kind of comforting the dog, and I hear this like whoop right outside of camp, and it was loud enough that I heard it, and I immediately turned, and I thought, "Oh, is that Ken?" Because Ken Gerhardt, he was in camp there with, there's a lot of people there that weekend for the kind of the Bluff Creek annual get together that they have every summer at Bluff Creek in Louse Camp. I thought it was Ken. Then maybe it was Rowdy Kelly. He's one of the Bluff Creek Project members. He'll do whoops every once in a while. But he was over by the fire, and I talked to people then. Nobody else heard it aside from me. So I'm like, okay, whatever. It was probably an owl or something. And then later on, when I was editing, I came across the sound again, and I had sent it to my friend Chris Spencer to check it out, analyze it, and kind of clean it up a little bit. And it sounds very weird. And then I talked to people again, and I started sending people messages. Was this your dog? There was only 2 dogs in camp. There was Rowdy's dog and Ron's dog. I was with Ron's dog, wasn't his dog. Rowdy said, yeah, that doesn't sound like Chloe. That's not my dog. And nobody else in camp knew about this sound. Everyone was too busy yapping over the fire and cooking hot dogs and doing whatever they were doing. I was at the periphery of camp. So it was weird. Again, I cannot say 100%, but that's probably the weirdest sound I've heard that I can, have people listen to, because I have the audio captured on video.
Thank you, Pat, for asking this. My buddy Pat Turner, you were there at that Patterson-Gimlin site. That's another great one I watched. You kids, I love you guys. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah, you wouldn't recognize it if I just plopped you in the woods and said this is the Patterson-Gimlin film site. You would say no freaking way. There's no way that this is the site. Think about it. It's been over 50 years. So you have entire trees that grew into where Patty was walking. And what I learned a lot from not only Rowdy Kelly of the Bluff Creek Project, but my buddy Tate, as well as Jonathan Easley of Western Bigfoot Exploration, who's kind of studied the site as well and been down there quite a few times, is that what happened was in 1964, you had this massive flood that flooded that part of Northern California. It caused a lot of damage for those communities like Willow Creek, and it washed out the area that Bluff Creek is in, where the creek goes in, where Patty walked. So that's why it looked really bare where she walked. And it deposited that sort of siltish kind of soil that actually to this day, you can still find these areas of this soil where you can punch it or leave a little impression, and leave a perfect almost knuckle impression that I could cast it and be like, oh, this is great. And that's exactly why then in 1967, when, Patty or whatever it was, if it was indeed a Sasquatch, or if it was, a person in a suit, walked through that area, I lean more towards it being a real Sasquatch, but those prints were really well preserved. And to this day, there actually isn't a lot that's grown in that area where Patty walked, because there was a really heavy depositing of that soil there.
Thomas wants to know if you saw the litter he left behind.
I didn't.
In 1983.
I'm sure those guys probably cleaned it up, because the Bluff Creek Project guys, and shout out to them, they just put out a book. Robert Leiterman put out a book, and some of the other members contributed as well, of course. They put out a book about rediscovering the film site, because it had been lost for some time, a couple decades, until they really were able to. What was amazing, what I learned the most at the site, was having Rowdy Kelly show up and show exactly. We had that famous frame of the PGF where it's walking. I forget what frame number it is, but he could pinpoint on the phone. He'd put it right in front of me and say, "Okay, you see this stump? That's that one right there," and would show the stump, and it's still there. It's very deteriorated.
Yeah.
You can see certain trees that are still there and certain things. So it was really interesting to see that and realize that, wow, this stuff is still here. So, we've had so many people contact us and comment on the video saying, that's not the film site. You guys don't know what you're talking about. You're all stupid. I know where it is. I'm like, dude, these guys have been studying this place for years. They know the intricacies of the film site in and out, and they can match up, object for object what was in there. So but again, you wouldn't recognize it if you were just plopped right down in there today. And it's rugged, it's tough getting in there. You got to hike to the film site itself, but even the drive in takes an hour and a half on these logging roads and these old roads that are just kind of seem like they lead to nowhere. Very rugged to this day. And what's really interesting too, and I think that changed my thought about the film in general, was how rugged that area was. I mean, they could have picked outside of Willow Creek to film the Patty film, and it would have been similar effect in the way it looked. But for some reason, they chose to go to this really remote area down deep, and it was one of the last places to get logged in the lower 48 at the time. So I think the tin piece was the lid of Renee's old tobacco tin.
Hey, Thomas, that's still litter. All right. Doesn't matter if that was a Legends tobacco tin.
Somebody might have snatched it up and sold it on eBay.
Somebody's like, oh my God, we're gonna sell this.
Yeah, this is Renee's Sasquatch authentic stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Thomas. More remote today, because you have this, when you first get in there, it's people think it's right outside of town of Willow Creek. No, Willow Creek's like 2 hours south of this area. You get to Orleans and you make the turn on this thing called the Go Road, which was actually a road that they were constructing that they were going to link with a highway on the other side that would connect the redwoods and the coast to that part of Northern California. As it is now, because it wasn't completed, you have to drive either an hour and a half to 2 north, or from Eureka, you go through the mountains to get to Willow Creek. So there's no easy way to get there. The Yurok Indians and the Hoopa, I believe it was primarily the Yurok, that's their hunting grounds, and they have sacred areas in there. They managed to get the construction of that highway blocked. The last few miles were stopped. So it was mostly going, stop biting me, dude. He's climbing on the leg. He really wants to play. But so they managed to get the construction of this road stopped. So you can literally drive the Go Road and it just stops at one point. And you just a drop off and you're on this sort of cliff area, because that's where the end of the road. So you're on a paved road for a while, and then you turn off on these old on the Forest Service roads. So it is probably more remote now. There's less people out there. There's no more loggers. And the gate to get down to the film site and to Louse Camp and other areas gets closed in about October, and sometimes doesn't reopen until June. So unless you're hiking in there, or maybe taking a bike or a motorbike in there, cars can't get in there. So almost half the year, there's basically no people down there. So if there are these things still there, perfect place to hide out. I mean, the Bluff Creek Project has all their cameras in one certain area. If you know where that is, you don't even have to worry about that. Yeah. So it's very wild to this day. And that really changed my view a little bit on the PGF. Not that I was already it was funny was there was that whole controversy with the Gimlin confession that happened a few days before we went out to the film site. So I'm thinking, oh boy, there's always some kind of weird controversy online. I'm like, I can't wait to get away from the Facebook and all the drama and everything. But it feels like a piece in your mind of the missing puzzle, or a missing piece of the puzzle about that film. When you actually see the site, you see how to this day it's still very tough to get in there. So I loved it, and I cannot wait to go back there again. I can't recommend enough to people. If you go in there, it's awesome. Oh, hey, what's going on, Brian?
Hey, Brian. So
Brian's a cool dude. He had a strange experience up here in New Hampshire in the White Mountains in one of my stomping grounds, and I've had him on my show. And he's a big hiker, and I actually have been hiking with him and his dog up here in the mountains, and he's a good dude. So what's going on, Brian?
Brian and Chewy, huh?
Yeah, Chewy's his dog. He's a good boy.
Part of the thing I liked the most about when you did that Bluff Creek thing was those guys put all those flags out to show the exact path. Yep. And then they were showing landmarks that are still there. They're rotting away, but they're still there. And I found that very compelling. It takes good people to go out like that and say, we're going to do this, and we're going to go, it's like putting together an old, like a burial ground of some kind, almost like you're trying to, archaeology is what I'm saying is.
Yeah, absolutely.
These guys did this like archaeologists. They stamped the little flags in. That was very well done. Lots of respect for these guys, man.
Yeah, and that's why they just put out that book, which is kind of about the story of rediscovering that film site. And I haven't gotten a chance. It just came out this past week. But I definitely, if people are interested in that, go check out the Bluff Creek Project and what they've done. I mean, there's a bunch of different members, and some are former park rangers, some are, working with TV and stuff like that. So they have a variety of different kind of backgrounds, but they all had a common interest in kind of rediscovering and sort of preserving the Patterson-Gimlin film site. And the best thing about them, and the best thing about them is they're not trying to turn it into a touristy spot where there's, car access and anyone can get there. But they're not charging people to go in there. I mean, they can't. It's the national forest land. But they're more than willing to say, yeah, here's the directions, here's how to get there, and they'll give you all the tips on how to get in there if they're not taking you, in there by yourself, or with a group of people. They're just totally willing to give that information out. So they're not hoarding the site and saying, this is our secret spot. And they do a good job, because that site, if there wasn't a group like them, nobody would probably know where it is. It would be a mystery. People would probably just be stomping around those beautiful mountains and trying to find it. And they'd have, oh, this is where it is. And one guy would say, no, this is where it is. And they really put some hard work into it. They did aerial maps. They drew, lines, surveying, all that kind of stuff. Really impressive stuff, actually.
I think that these types of places, if we're going to help each other out in this what we're doing, just like I tried forever to get people to come up to where we had our site. It took 5 years, and none of the big name people even. I never even got a not a call back, not an email back, nothing. It took till I got into this network of people with Leon and Pat Turner and these people that I got Brent Dills came up, and I
Yep.
got Steve Anderson came up, and they spent the weekend up there, and we got some things going, but it
Well, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know, what you guys did when you went to that site, but I had the experience recently when we were in Ohio, um, in a spot in Eastern Ohio where there's been a lot of reports, and we interviewed this eyewitness who I think her sighting was 10, 15 years ago. And nobody had ever gone down to the soybean field where she saw this thing to do a recreation. And I got to go in there and be the Squatch, right? And stand there and she said it was crouched over, thought it was a bear until it stood up and looked at her. And then in a few steps was out of the field. And I got to go out there and get myself all wet and muddy and jump around in a soybean and I think edamame, whatever it was in there in the field. And oftentimes witnesses, they have an experience like that, and it takes them either a while to get back out to the site, or they're scared, they don't want to get out there, they have possibly PTSD to deal with, or other things that inhibit them from wanting to go to that spot, or they've just simply never had somebody saying, hey, let's go out there and let's do a recreation of what you saw. Let's try and see what this possibly could be. And I think that's definitely part of it.
it's important. I think I suffered for a long time. This isn't about me. This network of guys and gals got me to a place where I can do this and stuff like that. And it's important, like what you said, is to document these areas and stuff. I think they're important because we know that in this spot that we go to, there's been activity. It was really prevalent in 2016. I mean, like over the top, but it's still there. Just not as much. I do sculptures, and I took a sculpture up to a higher camp 2 years after our encounter, up into a very high camp. And then I take these sculptures off in the woods and I hide them. I don't just
cool.
lay them on the. I do it with steel and aluminum.
Nice.
So we're at where we had our encounter, and my grandson says in the morning we're at the fire ring, and they moved the fire ring. He goes, Papa, what is that? And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, down there out by that rock. Here's the sculpture I put up in this high camp in the forest, hidden, sitting right there. And I don't know how to explain that.
Right. It's one of those things. I mean, is there somebody skulking around your camp at night?
Yeah.
It makes you think. I mean, I don't know. Some of the stuff we've had, like one of the more bizarre things I'd say we had happen was this past summer. I was in Vermont in the Green Mountains, and a friend of mine, Carrick St. Laurent, he was on my show on Monday as well.
Right. Yeah.
He's a very smart young dude as well. He's still in college. So we were camping in this spot. We were on our way to Lake Champlain, and we had put up a pheromone chip actually in a tree, and I had done some wood knocks the night before, just for fun. I thought, oh, what the heck, why not? And I was woken up in the morning by what sounded like a wood knock. I mean, I can't say it was, but that's what it sounds like on the audio. And then he went to the bathroom, came back to bed. We heard another one, and we were both sort of woken up by it. He heard it that time, at least. I was already awake. And after that, we had 8 different things thrown our way. That's the best I could really describe it. And we have it on audio, and we had no rainfly on the tent, and we're sitting in this dead end camp where there's just nothing but mountains behind it. It's smack dab in the middle of the Green Mountain National Forest, and we're just I'm sitting up. I remember I'm just kind of sitting up in like a half sitting position, half leaning over with my elbow on the ground, and Carrick's right next to me, and we're just seeing these objects coming through as the leaves are parting, as this thing is from a distance arching down towards us and falling into the thick pile of brush right in front of where the tent was. And that never hit the tent or anything like that. We're just sitting there thinking, what the heck We did not expect that in the slightest. We're just getting ready to pack up camp and get out of the tent, and we weren't even going to make breakfast. We had a place to be. We had an event going on in Lake Champlain. So it was so strange. And then we tried to run through the possibilities. Was it squirrels up in the tree knocking stuff over? We're looking around. I mean, I don't know how a squirrel could knock huge objects like that made that much sound as they were, and we could see them. We could see the arch pattern as it was kind of flying through the air, but we never saw what this thing was or what the source was. And we went out as soon as it kind of stopped. We got out of the tent and started walking in. There was extremely thick and green in that area, but we went towards this and there was nothing there. I mean, I don't know. We were loud and it took us a while to get up into this area. But I went back in October to the same camp with my brother, and I had my brother stand up in this kind of grove of trees where, I kind of theorized, well, if you were going to hurl stuff at camp, this would be a good spot to be. And that's where we saw these sticks and like rocks emerging out of from that area. And I had him throw stuff, and he couldn't throw it nearly as far. We tried rocks and sticks, and it was just unusual. I'm going to put out a video on that because I still have the video on that, just a comparison of the sounds. Because I cannot say 100% what it was. It was just very weird, and they were. Every 15 to 30 seconds, there was another object hurling our way. And, we as we filmed it, you can't really see anything. It's just, you just see leaves moving. You don't really see anything throwing or anything like that. It was kind of frustrating because, it gets to the point where it's like, should I just ran up there with my 357 as fast as I could and just, go all Rambo? I don't know. I don't know if I'd have that in me, because in the moment you're just sort of trying to understand, well, what is going on? There's plenty of other animals, maybe there's something else going on. We weren't really thinking Sasquatch. We were just kind of like, okay, weird. And again, I can't say 100% it was Sasquatch at the end. I just have a weird story and weird sounds to go along with it. And that's about it. I think that's a lot of this subject, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's like tantalizing because, I'd
what
love
was going
to be
through
able
your
to
head though,
conclude.
when you're seeing this shit flying past your tent? I mean, that's the one thing her and I have talked about is we had nothing thrown at us yet or toward us or by us that we know of. But when I hear guys like you telling the story of where you got shit flying past your tents, what the hell's going through your mind when you're seeing this? I mean, what are you thinking?
I mean, it was so early in the morning. It was 6:30 to 7 when this happened, and the light had just come up. So we were just kind of trying to, I just kept asking Carrick, are you hearing this? Are you seeing this? And he's glued to that area too. We're both, because again, we didn't have the rain fly on. It was not a rainy night. I was just enjoying looking at the stars, and we could see this whole area. And I have a video of it, of all the sounds, as well as we did like a walkthrough of the area. It's on my channel, Sasquatch Out of the Shadows, from back in like September, August. And, we explained the whole scenario afterwards. We're just kind of sitting there, and you can see us in camp. We're almost like, well, we don't really know what just happened, but something happened. I don't know. We had a tough time explaining it away as squirrels or other animals. Of course, that's the first conclusion we came to. Oh, it was probably some animal at the tree that was knocking stuff down. But again, why were we seeing it come in an arch pattern at us from up in this other area? So
Yeah.
I don't know. So what was going through my head? What the heck? And, we did hear that sort of wood knock sound. So we were thinking, but I think both of us at one point probably said, there's no way. I mean, this thing would be throwing stuff at us, right? Because, as you're into the subject, so you got to be very careful. You don't get trapped by yourself into that Bigfoot in the brain where everything is a Bigfoot out there. Because chances are probably 99% of the time, it's not a Bigfoot. It's something else that you're hearing in a weird way or that's unexplainable that you have to be extra skeptical when that sort of stuff is happening, especially if you're into a subject, and then, you got to cross-reference with other people, let them know, hey, can you listen to this or can you hear this? Like, I'm not just, this is not just our crazy story. Like, we have audio for it. Please listen to it and tell us what you think. And I'm not going to tell you the story before you hear the audio. Just tell me what you think. He's like, well, that sounds like some big objects. I'm like, okay, at least I didn't tell you to say that. You said that on your own accord. Like, I let friends listen to that audio after it happened. And, then I would tell them the story of kind of like, well, we just don't know what to say. I mean, we were not expecting it. We didn't go out there doing research. Sure, we put up a pheromone chip and did some wood knocks for the heck of it the night before. Did that draw something in? I have no idea.
Yeah.
The way you guys were acting when you were putting those pheromone chips up. Now I've put pheromone chips of elk on my boots while I'm out hunting.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to barf the whole time I'm
Oh
freaking
boy.
hunting. With these pheromone chips on my boots, they tell you put one on each boot, and I'm just like,
Yeah, these ones are especially bad. The way that they were developed by a friend of Doug Hychek's, and he was featured in Monster Quest with Dr. Greg Bambanek. That's his name. He goes by the moniker Dr. Juice because he makes hunting and fishing lures.
Doctor.
So you might have used some of his stuff that he's developed. He's been doing that stuff for a while, and Doug had him develop this stuff, and it's a combination of gorilla and human vaginal bacterial smells. So it's not pleasant, I'll tell you that. When I had to fly to California with it in my check-in suitcase, I had the jar itself does nothing to contain the smell. I had an empty ice cream, one of those like plastic ice cream jars that happened to be the perfect size this thing would fit in, and then double Ziploc bag it because I didn't want to be bioterrorist and clearing out the whole airplane. And God knows what would have happened if that thing had gotten loose in my suitcase. My clothes would have smelled like that, and everything I had basically would have smelled like Sasquatch pheromones. So not pleasant, but they're cool. They're definitely an interesting tool. I mean, whether or not people have had success, that's hard to tell. I don't know if we have. We like to use it every once in a while, try some different tricks, see maybe that'll bring other critters in, other things. So I don't know.
You never know.
Yeah, you really never know until you try.
Thank you, Sean, for coming in tonight. Good night, my brother. Sean had to retire tonight. He's got work in the morning, so I appreciate you being here. Even that Brian and Chewy go hiking. I want Brian, send me a message.
Yeah, have Brian on. He's really cool.
Definitely would like to talk to you. So
his story is really interesting. It's one of those stories, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Obviously, that's for him to share. But it's one of those things where he had this experience, and he didn't really understand what it was. Didn't even think really Sasquatch until years later when hearing an encounter somebody had on TV where it was a similar sort of scenario, and then it was like, wait, what the heck? And that happens a lot out here in New England, especially where people that I've talked to that have even seen a Sasquatch that thought I just saw a monster. And then they're like, Bigfoot never even entered my mind until years later, where they either see something on TV or they are on Facebook and somebody's talking about Bigfoot, and they're like, well, is that what I saw? I thought these things only existed in the Pacific Northwest, yet they're claiming that they saw this hairy man-like creature out while snowmobiling or out while hiking or foraging, whatever it is that they were doing. Like there's a lot of the stories here, there's gorillas. They use the word gorilla. I just found out about a report a couple months ago from virtually a few miles down from where I have a sort of research area now, where I've gotten some reports and some activity reported by other folks of a report from 1895 of a gorilla that was seen by two boys out turkey hunting, and it scared them out of the woods and led to like a whole posse kind of scenario. And it was just very strange, sort of, the description was very interesting. It was a gorilla that was hiding in the bushes and making noises and ran away from them, and they scared them out of the woods. And if you do
your research, you'll find that if very few people knew what a gorilla was back then. Now, I'm not talking about mountain gorillas. I'm talking about gorillas. Yeah. Very few people knew what those were. So then if you owned a gorilla, it would have been so beyond anything you wouldn't have been able to buy one.
No.
So, those stories intrigue me.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to some of those older stories, you have like the wild man and that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of those stories probably do have to do with humans that were either mistreated and kind of went to a feral lifestyle, or
I agree.
I think mental illness back then, people really didn't know how to deal with that. So people were often pushed out of society. There's a degree of that, but you get to the weirder ones where it's described as being 8 feet tall and, running around covered in hair, looking like a gorilla. It's interesting. I mean, one of my favorite stories from New Hampshire by far, and I'm still I do not know how I let this one slip by me, beating myself up for it. I gave a library talk about Granite State Bigfoot, which New Hampshire is called the Granite State, and I'll do it every once in a while. And it's just a fun time, get to talk about some of the sightings, because I've got about 60 reports that I've been given over the years of people, what they saw or what they heard. And, I'm hoping to publish that into sort of a piece that just has all the sightings. But this lady told me a story about either her uncle or her father, who was working as a prison camp guard in the Second World War up in the mountains in New Hampshire. They had German POWs and they had them on logging duty. And apparently at one point the Germans were complaining they didn't want to go in the woods anymore because they were seeing gorillas in the woods, which I mean is very, very strange. You know, what are these guys that they have no connection to that area? They're there by force. Obviously, they're prisoners. It was war. Why were they seeing these things? And that area where they were in actually has a lot of stories of these things called wood devils, which was an old logging story going back to the 1800s of a tall, hairy creature that would hide behind a tree. You could almost walk into it before you saw it. That's the description sort of given. And I've talked to folks who grew up in that area that said as when they were kids, their parents or their grandparents would scare them in their hunting camp, and they'd say, you know, don't go too far out of camp or the wood devils will get you. So it's a very strange story. I have not had a sighting. So yeah, as I said, I've not had a sighting, anything visual, just those few weird audio experiences and stuff possibly being thrown. So I cannot claim 100% that they were Sasquatch, of course. Yeah, so nothing visual, not even a glimpse of anything. But even if I were to see that, I would hope that I'd be able to, you know, then talk to the appropriate people and kind of like with Leon and a lot of these people do, ask the hard questions. Because, you know, again, it's that you're into this subject, you see something you think is Bigfoot. I think I'm going to be most skeptical of myself first and really be put to the test in terms of, you know, can you guys ask me the hard questions? Have no mercy, you know, let me have it. I want to know if what I saw was, you know, what it was, or if it was just me really projecting what I wanted to see onto something unknown. You know?
And that has to be done that way. That has.
I really think so. Yeah.
And these guys, I never felt like I'd been grilled or anything like that, but I thank God that I have a friend in Leon. I thank God. I thank God for almost all the people that are in this chat that have brought me through the worst time. Sure. And Leon's the number one guy. He was the first one to get me calmed down enough to talk, because I would just fly off the, you know, and I don't want to make this about me again. I'm saying that totally if it hadn't been for Leon, you know, I'd been this rambling, get angry, and just talk so fast you couldn't understand me. And he brought me down. He got me where I could understand what happened and everything. Yep. So, you know, I mean, I'm very grateful to him, but it's not just him. It's a lot of the guys in this network. And I don't know who this Kaija Ninja guy is. He keeps showing up, asking smart questions. Now, he's a good friend. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah, I'm teasing. But
that's cool.
So listen, I wanted to ask you, what is it? What is your favorite food when you're out and about? And what is it you have to eat? And then if you could have it, what would you have?
Oh boy. So, and this is not just me kind of kissing ass here because you're into barbecue, but I'm a barbecue fiend. I absolutely love barbecue. My friends will often make jokes that I could probably eat 15 pounds of brisket a day. Oh. I don't think I'd be here if I could. But I think barbecue, wherever I go, especially in the U.S., you know, other parts of the world as well. My family's from Europe, and you know, I've been to other parts of the world, and I love seeing what other people have with barbecue. But I think barbecue is a very quintessential American kind of mix of cultures. And wherever you go, like whenever I'm down south, I do the whole tour. You know, I'm like, who's got the better pulled pork when driving through the Carolinas? Is it south or north? Let's see. They got better sauce here. These guys got better cornbread. So it's barbecue. And, you know, I'm not very skilled at doing barbecue myself. I'm hoping to get to that level. Nowhere near your skill level, of course. But I really appreciate a good barbecue. So wherever I go, I try to have, you know, not just the chain places, but like those hole in the wall kind of spots where, you know, these guys have been roasting and cooking this stuff on the same kind of oven, same area, same smoker for years. You can see all that grit on the smoker. You know, that's probably a good machine there. So yeah. That's probably my favorite, you know, food when I'm out and about, especially when we're doing these filmings. We're always seeking some barbecue places. I mean, Eli probably is sick of it by now, but I try to pace it out a little bit. We don't just have that, but
So what, when you're cooking, I watch you guys, of course, you know, because I'm a big fan.
Sure.
I know you guys eat a lot of the dehydrated stuff and things like that. But do you? I notice you also like a good cheeseburger, though. Now,
We do.
a couple of times you've made some cheeseburgers, where I'm just like, oh, we're gonna have some of that.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, but
Buffalo burgers.
I mean,
Buffalo burgers.
not a little
amazing.
cheeseburger. We're talking about a fat ass cheeseburger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to kind of put a man to sleep.
Oh yeah, that's what sometimes you need when you're out there for
Hell yeah.
weeks on end in the woods. Just a good way to knock yourself out with a beer and a good buffalo burger. I mean, I love the buffalo burgers, but I'm actually putting a video that'll come out on my channel. I did some solo camping in the end of October, and I cooked 2 big fat steaks on my new cast iron. I'm just starting to get into that, so that'll a lot of the times when we do eat the dehydrated stuff and those mountain house meals that. They're okay, especially when you're out backpacking and out in the woods where space is an issue or weight. You can't carry the oven and all that, not the oven, the skillet or the griddle or whatever. So it's just ease, you pour it in water and that's it. You heat up the water, pour it in, that's it. And they're not the best. I mean, there's some that are better than others. I've eaten some of those mountain house meals and I was absolutely disgusted. And if I hadn't been out in the woods and hungry, I would not have eaten that. I mean, it makes me lose my appetite, but sometimes those little ramen things are better than the
I love them.
better than the dehydrated meals because they have MSG and they just all that spicy sauce. I like spicy, so that works for me probably better than the dehydrated backpacker mountain house kind of
You
meals.
bring that cast iron stuff up here, and I'm going to show you how to make a cake while you're out there.
Oh,
while you're in
that's
the
awesome.
forest, I'm going to show you how to make a delicious cake.
See, I've watched a lot of that guy, Cowboy. I think his name is Kent Rollins. He's got a channel where you do a lot of cowboy cooking and that kind of stuff.
Cowboy cook.
Yep.
I love it. That stuff. I watch it when I'm hungry always, which is a bad thing to do because then I'm like 1 a.m. and I'm like, what do I do now about trying to get some barbecue? There's no solution, of course. But I try to kind of step it up a little bit when I'm doing less of the filming side when I'm just out camping or having fun. Like my girlfriend and I go camping a lot, and we'll cook a legit meal. We'll do pancakes on the skillet. We'll do eggs and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes, especially with these productions, you're out there for a while. It's just tough to kind of constantly be cooking and cleaning stuff all the time when you're focused on research and filming. You just need a quick and easy meal. And sometimes we kind of try to do different things. So.
Well, back to the serious stuff, I guess. Patty.
Are the descriptions of Sasquatch different? I don't know. I mean, I hear everything from Patty to human. Yeah, I think, at least from what I've heard, some of the ones down south seem to be a little bit more shaggy or like more hair actually on the head, whereas you see that Patty one where it's definitely shorter kind of hair, at least the description. There does seem to be some variety, but I think in all places there's like some sort of consistency as well. In size wise, and I've heard all different colors as well, orangish hair, even kind of palish, blondish, but that dark brown, blackish color seems to be the most common whichever part of the country or North America you're in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brian's awesome. He's got this camera he puts on his on Chewy. Like a GoPro mount and just lets them run up and down the mountain. So you get the dog's view of what it's like to hike.
We got a German Shepherd that loves to run all over the place. We should do that.
Is there a cryptid that you would have yet to do? Oh, yeah. So definitely this is tough. 2 or 3 of my top are, one of them I'm sort of done a documentary on. It's just a short video on my YouTube channel. It's a lake, or not a lake, it's a river serpent called the Altamaha in Darien, Georgia, right on where the Altamaha River starts. I was down there as I was coming back from Florida last winter. We stopped in town, and they have a visitor center with a statue of what the creature is supposed to look like. And I talked to some fishermen, and the guy said, "Well, I've never seen the creature. I know somebody who has, but there's a creek not far from here where we get wood knocks all the time." So I'm like, okay, so I'm here looking for this other monster, and I'm hearing Bigfoot stories. But I'd love to do a documentary about that Altamaha creature. And probably my top is the Yeti. That's the first thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, that really got me interested in this topic. So I would love to go to the Himalayas, Nepal, Bhutan, and just soak in those environments. The Yeti's just, I guess, an excuse to go up there and hike around and play around in Nepal and Bhutan for a little bit and see those monasteries. And because you hear these stories, of people like Peter Byrne and others Pangboche Monastery, all these places where there's all these artifacts, and just that rich culture up there, I think is something I'd really be interested in.
Tom Slick gave Peter Byrne the money.
Yep.
And he got that monk drunk. Now, see,
Swindled
people
it.
get mad. People get mad when you go, he stole a religious relic. Well, get mad all you want. He admits it.
I know. Yeah.
He admits it on several documentaries. He admits he got a monk drunk, gave him a very small amount of money, American money, and he got this drunk monk to give him a piece of that finger. And then Jimmy Stewart, the great actor's wife, smuggled it out of the country in her underwear bag, because back then, customs did not look through women's underwear bags. It was like,
it was a no-go.
But guess what? When they did DNA on it, the DNA came back as Peter Byrne, because he had it. Like, I guess he hit it in his crotch or some shit like that. But all I know is people get upset when you try to tell the truth, and the man himself tells the truth, but all of the followers want to be like, he did not steal anything, blah, blah, blah. Yes, right. He did. Yes, he did. He got a monk drunk, gave him a little bit of money that the other 10 monks said, we're not doing this. But he got the one shitty one. Here's $100.
Swindled him out of a hand.
Yeah. Wrong hand in poker there, buddy boy.
No, it's a good story, if anything. I mean, I'm surprised no one's done a movie about that. Just that story. I mean, that sounds like would make a great narrative film. Definitely the Yeti is just one of my favorites. One I definitely would like to look into at some point. Hopefully we'll get the chance. And
Well, people ask me, Jay, have you found Sasquatch? And I always kind of go like, not Yeti.
Not yet.
That was so stupid.
Yeah, I love those kinds of jokes too.
That's called a dad joke.
Definitely.
Got a million of them. Hey, look, I appreciate you giving us the time tonight, brother. I really do.
Thank you so much.
I know there's a lot more to talk about, but I think I'd like to have you back again, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, we'll have to save that for my show as well. You're coming on for folks on here. He's going to be coming on 2 Mondays.
The 13th?
A week from this Monday, excuse me. So Brent Dill is actually coming on this Monday, and then the following Monday, because I do my show every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and Brent will be on next week, and then Jay is on that following week. So it should be a really interesting kind of Washington back-to-back discussion. I always like to talk to people from all over the place, different areas. I always like to learn about other places and other areas that hopefully I can visit someday. So it's really awesome.
Well, on the 9th, we have Tristan Yolton. We're going to talk about Bumping Lakes.
Oh, cool. I've heard a lot about
Lake and the sounds. He has, him as Kaiju Ninja. He has some sounds that are very interesting. That sounds that me and Mrs. Barbecue have heard during our encounter. And then on the 16th, we have Sean Payton and Brent Dill. We're going to talk about hoaxers and why people follow them.
Nice.
That night. And then on 23rd, we're going to have a Christmas show with everyone who wants to come on will be involved. And we'll just wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And we'll just have a fun show. I hope that you guys, especially you guys in the chat, spread this out a little bit. Let's give Alex some support. Absolutely. You guys are incredible. And I follow you. And I'm grateful to have you as a friend too. And
appreciate that. Yeah. And I can't wait to link up. And, at the end of the day, we're not, we're just guys that like to get out there and have fun.
Right.
We try to take it seriously, of course, the subject, but behind the scenes, everyone's having a good time and laughing. And that what's better than being out in the woods with your friends and doing something you like and being able to share that with other people. So that's definitely part of it. And for people in the community, people like Jay are great. They come out and tell their story, and we got to help support folks like Jay's been talking about with others that have supported him, because I know plenty of people that they are very scared to share their stories with anybody aside from when they trust you. So I think if we foster an atmosphere where there's a little bit more of an acceptance and not as much looniness. I think that'll serve us in the long term a lot better. And I do just gotta say this comment from Pat. He said the Mountain House beef stroganoff is the bomb. That is definitely the best Mountain House, because all the other ones are kind of that one's really good. So he's totally right about that.
So on the I would just like to say I'm going to be with Cornell
Awesome.
on the No Such Thing podcast this coming Sunday. Looking
Cornell's
forward to
awesome.
working with Cornell.
He's
And
cool,
then
yeah.
I get to be with Mr. Alex Petakov on the 13th on a Monday. So I'm really excited about this. Hey, we got a full docket here going. I'm really excited about this, and I'm glad that you guys are following us and coming along this little ride here. So I'm very grateful to you, and I want to get some of your comrades on here too. I really enjoyed your show the other night, and
yeah, it was a good show.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm so
they're all good
impressed with
people.
these young guys and their picks in the books, and having the books that I had years ago. I mean, years ago, back in the early 90s, you know, when I had that signed copy. And you know what Renee did? He signed that basically to her. That's how that guy works, man.
Right. He's like, oh, forget Jay.
to Amanda, it was great love, and then and Jason. See, I go back. I'm Jason, but online I just go by Jay. But I'm just like that guy. He loved women, man.
That's funny.
But anyway, I want to say good night to everyone. Thank you again, Alex. And we're going to head out now. If you want to hang out for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. You guys are both awesome and very gracious hosts, and can't wait to have you on, Jay, and down the road, hang out and get out there and do some squatching.
Absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you.
Awesome.
Here we go.
Bigfoot, nobody loves you. Hell, nobody even likes you. It is because you are of a lower class. If this is you in your picture, okay, you do look a little bit tough. But I know an old boy from Yakov makes you look like a powder puff. We can fight tonight at my house if you think you're man enough. But $100 says you don't show